Chris Hayes points out something immediately obvious. Inflation. The Biden administration passed the IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act. Inflation has fallen 5%. Forget about what are the absolute real reasons for inflation falling. The fact of the matter is the IRA was passed and inflation has fallen. If this were Republicans, they would be jumping on the bandwagon to say, we said we would reduce inflation with the Inflation Reduction Act. And guess what? Inflation went down. Listen to how Chris says it best.
1 year ago today, the Inflation Reduction Act, the most significant piece of climate legislation in U.S. history, was signed into law. And there's a case to be made. It's one of the most significant and successful pieces of legislation ever passed. I mean, just look at the name and then look at what it did. In August of last year, when the Inflation Reduction Act was signed into law, inflation was 8.3%. 1 year later, inflation's about 3.2%. Inflation was reduced. Promises made, promises kept. Now, I can hear all of you macroeconomics buffs out there yelling at your TVs. The IRA was a clean energy infrastructure bill with some drug prescription pricing too. Dropping inflation had more to do with the easing of the supply chain issues from COVID and the decline in oil prices as markets came back after the invasion of Ukraine and the rate hikes from the Fed. Yes, that's all true. The way politics works is the president gets all the blame when the economy is bad, so they get to take the credit when the economy is improving. So the Democrats had this kind of stroke of genius last summer when they were loggerheads with West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, the deciding vote, who was wavering on voting for the act because he was concerned about additional spending and what it would mean for inflation. So they renamed their spending bill the Inflation Reduction Act. At the time, that was seen as a kind of cheeky dig at Republicans, but it worked. That decision has borne both substantive and political dividends. I mean, think about it this way. If it were a Republican president who signed a bill called the Inflation Reduction Act, and then inflation dropped by 5 points in 1 year, it would be all they ever talked about. So, President Biden, any other Democrat in politics, some free advice. I understand you're kind of reluctant to bring up inflation when it's still a little higher than everyone would like it to be, but 3.2% is a lot less than 8.3%, and everyone knows that. Go out and tell everyone, we passed the Inflation Reduction Act, and over the next year, inflation plummeted. Think about it this way. If you'd passed the Inflation Reduction Act and inflation had gone up 5 points, your goose would be cooked. Republicans would talk about nothing else. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act and inflation plummeted. It even fits on a bumper sticker.
So yes, again, it's time for the Biden administration to claim my policies not only kept the economy vibrant, because it is very vibrant right now, but it also reduced inflation. Is that an absolute fact? Well, we are not sure because there are a lot of different independent and dependent variables. But you know what? Had he not passed an Inflation Reduction Act, had he not done any of this and inflation went sky high, he would have taken the blame. So he should go ahead and accept all the credit right now for the success of the Inflation Reduction Act, even if nominally. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel. And number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.